Hi, everyone. It's Martha Novak. Um, I hope that you all are doing well. We're still in the coronavirus quarantine era, although certain things here and there are loosening up. So I wish you well. This is an interesting time for everyone that I know. Most of us are, um, to some degree, studying consciousness, even friends that are not working in my organization. And um, everybody's seeing an advantage to this. Oh, yeah, our lives are all disrupted, by the way, that's the point. But it's a real interesting time how every week, as I'm talking to people, I see things shifting for everyone. It's really interesting. Um, Consciousness is certainly changing, at least among some of us that are open to that. Thank you for listening to the show. We're talking about authenticity right now and what makes a person authentic. I found some interesting articles I do want to put on the table again. I usually do this when we talk about somebody else's work, that in no way am I criticizing their work and what they're trying to do. What I am saying is trying to make you more discerning in terms of consciousness. Sometimes the words that people use do not serve us in this particular study. So just want to put that on the table, that you're going to hear me today say, oh, I hate that phrase. And there's so many articles that have this phrase in there. Cat. That I do, my job is to teach consciousness. So I'm just trying to open up the door past what is being said out there, so that when you read things like that, you can make a decision of your own. Well, there seems to be an objection to that phraseology, so let me think it through to see what I believe. That's really what I'm trying to put on the table here. I think the subject of authenticity is what all of life is about. Certainly every self-help thing that we've ever read, certainly every radio show I've ever done, and every article and every fiction thing I've ever written has to do with this one subject. It's vast, it's important, there are a lot of moving parts. Don't be overwhelmed by this, ladies and gentlemen. Take what you can. Change what you can. Tomorrow is another day. I sound like Scarlett, don't I? And you may change something else. But just, we're working on the moments. The moments make up a life. Let's make those moments wonderful. All right. I'd like to start out with a prayer, and then we're going to launch into our material. Okay? Here we go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for our coming together like this today. We know that everything is changing. We open our consciousness to change with it, that we may cooperate with the energies that are, and learn and grow and have opportunities here that we never saw before. We now ask that something in us opens, that we may cooperate. We ask to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do in the truth that lies in your enlightenment, because there are various kinds of truths, and we seek the one that is of the highest energies of love. We also ask that we know nothing, that we accept that we know nothing. For it is the you through us and through all things that know it all. And we ask to be in the energy of receiving that kind of information from you. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of this. We celebrate it all, the lives lived, and the becoming that we are. Thank you so much. And we say this prayer now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to the show. And so it is. Amen. If you see me squinting today, it's because I didn't look very hard for my glasses, and I should have, before I ran out of time. They're probably under some papers because I'm writing my next book, and oh Lord, I got papers upon papers upon papers. So we'll just squint. All right. I started talking about an article. This is by, oh yes, there was that name I couldn't pronounce. Chiki, Tchiki Davis. I'm going to call her Dr. Davis. She's a PhD who called Develop Authenticity, 20 Ways to be a More Authentic Person. Man, we're going to not just her article. We'll soon be finished with that, but we have quite a list of mine. We had stopped with take it slow to develop your authenticity, that it's a process. And now the subject switches in her article to now that you have a better sense of how to be authentic, here's how to stay authentic. And the first one she starts talking about is something that I absolutely think we need to talk about. Make telling the truth a habit, she says. The hard thing about this is that most people believe their lies or don't know that they are lying or half lying because it's so habitual they believe it too. I think it becomes very important to work on yourself. You're going to hear that over and over again, but to work on yourself enough so that you know the lies from the truth. That takes sometimes, by the way, several years. I can speak from experience. When I was quite a young girl, I had an awakening of sorts, and I realized that I was people-pleasing to the extreme. We are trained, ladies and gentlemen, we're not trained to tell the truth. No one has been. I don't care how hard your parents came down on you about telling the truth. First of all, not anybody knows the truth of you but you. You're the one that knows your sincere motivations, and that's where the truth is revealed if we look at them truthfully. So, in that, we grow up to emulate our parents, to people please them. We give more praise for that, don't we? Than finding out the truth and what we really believe. You know, it's not just about telling the truth. It's also about telling the truth in love. And there's not an ego in the world that will do that. The ego child's mind does not tell the truth in love. The ego child's mind is confused about what the truth really is. The ego child's mind is pissed off and it's going to express themselves a lot of times angrily. It's manipulative and a lot of other things. So the ego child's mind is not the truth-telling part of it. Years ago, I remembered that I really had a moment of revelation that I was people pleasing all the time, and I decided I was not going to do that. And while I was never a harsh person, and certainly was never going to speak harshly to other people, I was going to be myself. I remember as I was talking to a very cute young man who later became my first husband, I remember standing outside some sort of bus. I directed and wrote shows for live amusement parks, and so we traveled all over to these amusement parks, mounting the shows, casting people, that kind of thing. I remember standing outside the bus. I remember this moment quite well, and said something. What, I don't know. That shows you how important it was. And it was just one of those cute little things that we say. And I realized it was a bloomin' lie. So I stopped and I said, wait a minute. I just lied. And I started telling the truth from that moment on. It was a significant moment for me, where if I knew the truth, by gosh, I was going to tell it in some way as kindly as I could. It was always about me, by the way. It wasn't ever about anybody else. I was the untruthful one. It wasn't about my judgment of another person. But I'm going to tell you, from that revelation came, wow, the years brought an open doors and doors and doors and doors for me to see more falseness that I needed to fix. I think it's important. I can't tell you how important this is. Because when you reach a certain degree of authenticity, the relief is tremendous. Just be yourself. Doesn't matter who likes it and who doesn't like it. We all want to be liked, but hey. At the end of the day, you can live with yourself when somebody doesn't like you, if you like you. Right? But we have to be honest about that too. She goes on to say that lying is sometimes for convenience sake, to further some agenda, to cover up some embarrassment, to save face. She says these seem like little white lies that don't hurt anything. However, the more lies we tell, the less we are accepting of our authentic self. That I do agree with. But there's so much to this. Man, I could talk for several hours on this point alone, but I do want very much to address this, so we might as well jump in there. First of all, we don't ask ourselves the hard questions. I've got some hard questions here. It's a cultural quiz. Sometimes I give my classes. I'd like to give that to you today. You can write some of these things down and answer them in the deep, quiet stillness of your own heart and your own home. So sometimes we don't ask ourselves those hard questions. Like, what's my motivation for doing that? You keep in mind, in the emotional body, there's not just, I'm doing this for altruistic reasons, and I'm doing this for selfish reasons, for example. In the emotional body, and this is the thing that's so confusing to people about the emotional body, is it's everything. Both of those things are included. Now, as a consciousness coach, and as someone who does healings and fools with your energy so that your behavior changes out there in the world, okay? If we change the energy, the thoughts, the feelings, the behaviors change. as someone that does that, I want to put on the table that it is what we've talked about before, a process. It's a process. No way to hurry it. This isn't going to be a light switch that goes on. This is going to be a gradual process of saying, whoa, that's not exactly honest. And both of these things are present in me. That and this and this and this and this and this. We've got to realize that we're a mixture of it all. By the way, we resolve this and help you find out that you are human and that that is very acceptable, and we have you own it and then assimilate it so that you are whole. This is the developed whole that you didn't start as the kid. You were the undeveloped whole. And when you become the developed whole, the energy changes from a fear-based experience to a love-based experience. This is real freedom. Let me give you some questions. Let's start out that way, and then there's more to be say about the subject, and I'll take you into my pet peeve at that time. So my class and I work with questions we call culture questions. This is your culture, not anybody else's. So you might want to write some of these down. What are the behaviors that you're doing right now that aren't in your best interest? Hello, Lisa. I'm so glad that you're tuned in today. I appreciate it so much. I'll look for you all, you and Kat and the rest of the gang every week. It thrills me. So what are the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that you're doing that aren't in your best interest anymore, that aren't in keeping with your highest self? If, presuming, and it's an accurate presumption, I will say, that there is a higher self that is love-based, an ego child's mind that's driven by fear, what are you still doing in the ego child's mind that's not in keeping with the ascended mind, which isn't in your best interest? It can be judging other people. It can be being negative thinking. It can be all sorts of things. You might want to look back at your cognitive distortion list. We did a radio show on that, a lot of radio shows on that, as a matter of fact, several months ago or a year ago. What is of that behavior of what you're doing? What are you getting rewarded from it for in some way? Now, here's the interesting thing. I have friends that chronically criticize themselves, negative think, and they're always throwing themselves into depression. If you're standing outside, look at that and you think, that's not a good idea. Why the hell do they do it? And a lot of times they're doing it for a couple of reasons. Number one is that allows them, if life was really a bowl of crap, it allows them to be in fantasy, and fantasy is a feel-good place, and you can't create anything from it, and that's the point. It just makes you feel good. And also, another part of that is whether fantasy is a part of it or not, beating yourself up like this, you have to have some sort of soothing technique. Most of the time, fantasy is part of the soothing technique. But it could be anything. It could be isolating and withdrawing. It could be finally taking care of yourself that you don't do any other time. So you give yourself crap and you get yourself all upset, and then you do these things. And it's the kindness that you give yourself. But guys, there's a better way, because that's what the child did when it was hurt and it went to its room. Don't you understand? You're an adult now. We need to fix the problem as close to the moment of the problem as we can. Is this appropriate? We need to find out the truth of the situation. We need to correct what we can. We need to let the rest go. We need to stop personalizing and mind reading and realize all these things in the ego child's mind, which is very ego-centered, right? That everything there isn't all about us. There are some truths outside that we are just observing, that we're just a part of. But it isn't about us and how bad we are and how wrong we are or anything else. Y'all, excuse me, I have no coronavirus, but I do have pollen allergies, and it's beautiful outside, but pollen city. Okay. I don't know why the light's coming and going like that. Anyway, thank you for the sip of tea. Okay, so what's your reward? Is it something like that? For doing what you're doing. What's your reward? You're getting something out of this. I have a friend who is a great pretender. She's never herself. She always pretends. She does a lot of things for other people because she wants something back, right? She's a great pretender. She dresses to the nines. She looks exquisite all the time. Does she feel that way? No, not at all. She is often depressed. She's extremely lonely. She isolates and withdraws. She's afraid of people. She thinks she doesn't know how to handle grown-up situations. She eschews intimacy. You know, somebody starts to get close, she finds fault with them and pushes them away. So what's her reward out of all that? She looks really good sometimes. She really fools people sometimes, and that makes her feel better and makes her feel more valuable and more special because she doesn't have it inside of her. But she can't stay there too long or they're going to find out about her and who she really is and that she doesn't have it on the inside. So she's got to find fault, move away, find a reason to break up or hold people at a distance. And she says, and no doubt, she really wants to find intimacy and connection with people. But her connection are merely attachments. They're not connection. Because she won't be herself. How do you connect with somebody when you're wearing a false mask on top of it? Don't you see? Just another example of that. And we have to ask ourselves in this that we're doing right now, what am I blaming myself for? What am I punishing myself for? What am I so blooming ashamed of? In that, another question is, how do you spend your time and your energy and your money? Because that's what you're going to get more back from. Most of us, if anybody has any money problems, it's not a money issue. It's a lack of money issue. And money is energy. And you've got to look at all the ways that you're leaking energy. Do you care too much about what other people think? Are you too invested in their lives so that you are not creating anything of your own? You see, there's got to be a strong sense of self here. It is you relative to what you create. It's you relative to the beautiful day. It's you relative to your friends. It's you relative. You are in the equation. Many people don't know that and have left themselves out. They're leaves in the wind. A really important exercise, and one that I strongly recommend, because, I want to put on the table, my darlings, that because many of us are so unaware of ourselves, we think we're fooling everybody, and we're not. We're not fooling anybody except ourselves. So it becomes enormously important to not fool yourself anymore. Another question is, what are your rules? What are your rules? Everybody has rules. What are your rules? I have to go to bed by 9 o'clock. Well, you might be missing something. I should go to bed. Well, they might need to. Usually, when you stay up too late, it's because you're denying yourself things to enjoy during the day, by the way. You're not taking care of yourself, nurturing yourself, giving yourself some time off here and there at 5-minute intervals. Life is all about balance, but the balance that we talk about in society and that you read about in the newspaper and self-help articles do. But true balance is how you, what you're doing to be. Taking those little moments. Enjoying things throughout the day, even if you don't enjoy your work. Making sure that by 6 o'clock you're deprived. Making sure you have filled your day with some wonderful moments that mean something to you. Then you'll go to sleep at a reasonable hour. You see? If you're defiant about anything, grabby, or it's saying, or needy, it's just saying we're out of balance in more subtle arenas. What are those subtle arenas? Energy. Where is your energy going? If you people please all day without ever pleasing yourself, there's a balance problem here. Okay. So we want to know what your rules are. What are your rules? What are the rules that you are strictly adhering to? What are the rules that you beat yourself up for not following? And what are the rules that you so blithely go past all the time because you're defiant? And do you really need those rules? Or can you just find balance in a more subtle way in your life with your energy and not need them? You see, if you grew up, ladies and gentlemen, interpreting life around you that you weren't enough, you're going to try to seize absolutes. Those rules sometimes, we feel, keep us safe. What if there were no rules other than the general how to live in society, how to be a nice person rules? And what if your life was not about forcing you to do this or that? No purpose, completely useless. See, these are extremes, ladies and gentlemen. You don't want either one of them. You want to live something balanced and in the middle. You want to think about what this is on a deeper level for you. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which I don't like the word disorder because I find a lot of disorders, in fact, all of them are more ordered than normal. I think of them more as defensives, but they have a lot of rules. You know, I've told you all the story on these radio shows about my husband and I when we first got married. My husband and I argued that about the pans under the stove. He likes to stack them in a neat order. I randomly throw them in there because I don't have time to deal with that. Now, our solution, and we haven't argued about it since, was, my darling husband, if that means a lot to you and you have time, I am thrilled that you stack them, and I will appreciate that because I like things to look neat too. But darling, if you are going to harangue me because I'm not doing it, you're going to spend a lot of energy for the rest of your life, because the truth is I'm not doing it. Why? Not because I'm thwarting you, and not because I'm messy. It's because it's not important to me as working with one of my clients, or writing a book, or cooking you a good dinner, or enjoying the day with you in some way. That's more important to me. You see, we each have what's important to us. Why argue? Why not just come to an equitable solution? That's great. Another question. Who are your friends? I think if we have friends that truly accept all of us, the whole kit and caboodle, we are really lucky people. A lot of times our friends can accept something, and not this, but that. And that's fine too. And we really shouldn't, we must realize this about friends. We must accept love and caring from all sorts of people. And we must, in turn, love and care for all sorts of people. But that isn't contingent on rules. Here we are with rules. That isn't contingent on this love isn't good enough, or this is the kind of love I require, or how dare they not like my book, or anything else like that. This is just about who we are as loving people and whether we love or not. So I think that sometimes we need other friends in our lives. I think when we're very fear-based and we think we don't know how to handle people, and we are afraid of losing control, and afraid of looking bad, and afraid of feeling bad, we have all this artificiality. We have our system to protect ourselves. And in that system, sometimes we don't let people in. And if we do, we keep them very shallow. We have the hand up, talk to the hand, but try to pretend that we're not doing that, right? I think it's really important to start collecting good friends around us. I don't think we can have too many. I think we can run out of time, you know? And I think we can't have so many that it takes the energy away from us. We always must be introspective. We always must understand how we are wired. But it's mighty fine to have friends around you that you can talk to, that you can tell your problems to, that understand, that just listen without trying to fix. They are not your therapists. Neither is your husband or your wife. It's really important just to have people that care enough about you to listen, and sometimes only give this aspect of you. You know, it was real funny when I wrote my first book on consciousness. It's called The Life You Want. It's a hard book. I mean, you know, at first it's hard to understand because I'm deliberately hitting a lot of our issues along the way, right? And it was real fun because I gave advance copies to a few of my friends, which they all said, "Oh, I love this book." 2 people who are not clients, by the way, and have nothing to do with the work that we're doing here, didn't like that book. They didn't come to me to tell me why. They went to my husband. One time it was because I didn't put enough Jesus in the book. Well, the book was about consciousness and not about Jesus. I could have addressed anything that they were thinking. I can't even remember what the other person said, but they weren't mature enough to come to me and say, look, I don't like this. I don't understand it. Here's my problem with it. And let's have a discussion. And then agree to disagree or disagree. Couldn't do it. So, are they as close of friends, right, as other people that will talk about anything and everything? Even if you have a problem with me or I have a problem with you, I'll care enough about you for us to work it out, right? Don't people please to the extreme so that you just can't be real and talk in a loving way. I think these folks felt threatened in some way, their world, and they didn't realize that, and therefore they didn't have thrown into such fear. If I'm being unfair to them, I'm unfair. I don't know, they didn't talk to me. So I think it's extremely important to have a group of people around you that can really talk to you. Again, they're not there to fix your problems. They're there to listen to you and to make a suggestion or two and not invest in whether you do it or not. And we have to be, when we're talking to friends like this, be grown up enough to not have to run from person to person to person to person to person and tell them our problems and then never do anything. We got to make our own decisions about this. Friends are there to help you think out of the box. That's great. They're not there to be the therapist. I'm going to say that again. Why? Why am I saying that? Because everybody in the world, in the ego child's mind, likes to have themselves validated, but they're validating the wrong part of you. They're validating the selfish part of you, the part of you that wants to be right all the time. They're validating all those things that exist in the ego child's mind. I'd much rather figure out my own problems there and have really loving, good discussions in the higher self, or have someone ask me to go there if I am stuck in that ego child's mind. I think my favorite friends are friends that just listen, that don't try to fix anything, because I'm capable of fixing things myself. I just need them to hear I'm pissed today, or I'm sad today. You see? Be that kind of friend. And seek those kinds of friends. What's your secret shame? I think it's important to resolve that. Are you ashamed you didn't go to college? Well, where are you going to go to learn what you have indeed learned? Are you ashamed that some aspect of you is not correct, right, doesn't look good from the outside? Throw all that out. Just address what's true here. Some of us have done things. I know I have. But every life we've done something that we're usually ashamed of. Why isn't that all right? If there are people around you that are judging that, maybe you need to get people that are more open-minded. doesn't mean that you're always wrong. It means that you are wrong unless you learn something from it. If you learn something from it and your life is different and you're going on from it, that's called being human. That's called transcending. That's called becoming. And that's called taking advantage of the opportunities present in learning. Okay, more questions. What pisses you off? You have categories for this, by the way, not people. For example, I'm really fine with everything. I'm pretty easygoing, except in one incident. And that is, don't you criticize anything in the way I'm living my values. I mean, in my values. I thank you for those hearts. Oh, aren't you sweet, Cat? I try to be a good person. I try to do my best. I may not have all the information, so I may make a mistake in a decision because I may not have all the information, but I'm trying to do my best with what I've got. And if somebody like a husband steps up because he's having a bad day, and he steps over that line and he criticizes that, boy, look at you, Vesuvius. When really all I'm saying is get your toe back over the line just because you're hungry and grouchy. Doesn't mean you can say that, you know. That's the only thing that ever pisses me off these days in my personal life. What are your categories? We need to find out what they are. Not only do we need to find out what they are, we need to find out why they piss you off. If, you know, I've noticed for years that people that have issues often play them out in organizations. I'm all for, and I'm not relating it, this is a true thing for this organization. I'm just talking here to give you an example. So, you know, this is not a truism. But if I have my hand up about saving the whales, and I mean, I may really offend people in that area because it's my anger at life, at disappointment, at everything that's coming out in that rally of that rally cry. See, we've got to know why. What motivates us to feel the way we do? Are you pissed off for a good reason? Are you pissed off because, you know, you felt deprived as a child? Because you're still angry about this or that? Then I think it's really important for you to look at that. Some other questions. What were your favorite childhood books and heroes? If you didn't read books, they'd be in the movies, they'd be somewhere. I always ask that in my sessions anyway, because if somebody says, Cinderella, I think I mentioned last week, I think I've even done a radio show on Cinderella. There are lots of things wrong with that if you're using that as a benchmark for life. Don't get me started. That's a whole nother show. In fact, I did 1 or 2 shows on that. So who you identified with as a kid, who you liked particularly, who struck you, who still strikes you in the movies. What character, right? What character? I had a young man at one time who was a great artist. He used to draw monsters, horrible monsters. The sweet young man would draw just the worst ghoulish monsters. He'd been reared in a fundamentalist church. There was nothing right or wrong about that. It's what he did with it, of course. And he felt enormously repressed. He was very, very, very repressed, and all of his emotion was suppressed. So he expressed that part of him, the dark side, if you will, the human side that he couldn't live with, through his art. Happy to say we've resolved that now. No more monsters. He draws other things, making quite a nice living at it. So it really helps for us to look at those stories. Now, it also helps us to look at what stories were told about you when you were young. I think sometimes the stories that come down through the family, or the stories that we remember, contain some really important things for us to face and to transcend, and to, before we can transcend, assimilate in us. You know, I've said this in other radio shows, I'm going to put it on the table now again, and that is that if God is everything, if God is everything in the world, and I believe God is everything in the world, it's just in high vibration degrees or low vibration degrees. But I think the reason we argue about God is our interpretation of God is according to either the ego, child's mind, or the highest self, or both. And it's just confusing us terribly, right? But I think God is everything. It depends on whether you believe in the absence of it or the fullness of it, or whether you're going back and forth. We toggle back and forth a lot of times, right? In that, what do you really believe? Why are you really acting the way you do? What are your motivations? And certainly the human condition is to have both things present, but consciousness is about moving more and more to the ascended energies and resolving these ego, child's fears and fear-based experiences, fear-based motivations. In these stories, what was your takeaway? What did you surmise about yourself? If your father was a workaholic and never paid any attention to you at all, what did you surmise about you? Now, keep in mind, this isn't about him, because the ego child's mind is very egocentric. It's self-absorbed. It's self-indulgent. It's all about you. You're not to the bottom line of any issue until you say, and at the bottom, this is what it is. You know, all those people in the world that say, oh, I lied to her to spare her feelings. No, you didn't. You lied to her because you didn't know how to handle a big blow up. That's what it is. Come on, guys. Let's be honest about all of it. It's always and forever, if it's in the ego child's mind, about us. And you're not to the bottom line of the truth that will indeed set you free until you admit that and own that and resolve it. It's what you did at the time. It was your consciousness at the time. You don't beat an 8-year-old up for not knowing how to drive the car. They're 8. So stop beating yourself up too. You've worked out of the information you had at the time. Okay, you say you had some information and you did it anyway. You had a great learning experience, did you not? It hurt like hell. You're wiser. That's something money can't even buy. What happens when you fail? Next question. What happens when you break your own heart? What happens when you set yourself up for disappointment and you get it? What do you do? If you're doing the same thing that you did when you were a little kid, the grown-up version, like as a kid, shut yourself away, watch a lot of television, sleep a lot, isolate and withdraw, create fantasy in your mind, and as an adult, do some version of that and drink yourself to sleep every night. There's some balancing that needs to be done. There's some truth-telling that needs to be done. There are other ways to deal with these things. What other ways to deal with these things have to do with who you are and the kind of person you are and what you enjoy, right? But you can't deny your feelings. Those feelings are a third of your learning experience. And it makes you smarter, even if you have a horrible disappointment. You have to learn from it and look forward to the future and go on. Use it to learn. I think there's some important words to get used to and to, by the way, see what you really feel underneath them. When you think about change, the word change, how about radical change? There was radical change when my husband found me. He was a friend of mine 48 years ago. Out of the blue one day, after his wife had died, and I had been divorced for 12 years, there he was on the internet, on, of all things, LinkedIn, saying, "Are you my friend from long ago?" He was over here in 10 days. We realized immediately this was our time. You talk about radical change. Yeah. Well, guess what I worked on? I worked for years on being comfortable with radical change. I am really comfortable with radical change. Change is just the movement of God, guys. We've got to realize when we're resisting that, call it what it is, and get ourselves in line with cooperation. There's nothing here to hurt us but the past, and the past only repeats itself and comes around and round again in different disguises because we're not looking at it, not because we are. Those things kind of go away when we don't have to deal, when we've already dealt with them. There's nothing new to learn, right? So you've just got this moment. That's what you're left with. Make it a good one when the past is gone. This is right now. Make it a good one. Learn something. Give something. Grow. Write. Create. Experience. Okay. Other words. This is from, well, I don't know where this is from. But some other words are exposure. Vulnerability. That's a real good one. I work on that one all the time. Vulnerability. Uncertainty. In this world, a real, incredible gift that we get to, by the way, because we open to it, not because we've earned it, but because we've opened to it, a really important thing to open to is the tolerance for uncertainty. Because this is an energy of the world. It's the strangest thing, but it is an energy of the world that you can expect the unexpected for the rest of your life. It happened a number of years ago. I don't know why, but we can expect the unexpected now. I want you to watch television and see and read the newspaper and see how many people are predicting what's going to happen. You know why? Because there's an intolerance for not knowing. Intolerance. We all are, these people are fear-based, and we want to make sure we're going to be all right. We want some sort of guarantee from God. And if some sort of pundit on the television tells us it's going to be all right, or by the way, it's not, we feel justified. Well, guys, wait a minute. What do you think? And if you say, well, I don't know, that's fine, isn't it? Why not know? It's fine. We're going to be fine. But you've got to know what you know. Where does that come from? A sense of who you are. For God's sake, look at those value lists that I have recommended to you before. Find out who you are. Start working from that. Ideas about the world and about your situation and about everything is going to come up through you once you start looking inside and get beyond fear. I've said all along that when you're in your highest self, it's like a surfer. You know how they are kind of on the edge of the wave all the way into the shore, and they're safe on that. If they're in that spot, God actually keeps you in that spot, but only when we're cooperating with that energy. You see, this is the energy of you know, the thought, the need, the desire to get another job a year ago. And some people acted on it and some people did not. And I'm not saying everybody heard that, but I want you to hear it. I want you to hear messages like that from you. This isn't anything you hear on television. If you do hear it on television, something rings inside of you saying that's your message. And if all this sounds like pie in the sky, ladies and gentlemen, it is not. It's the way to work with the energy that you are more beautifully, more productively, and certainly more powerfully. Another question. What happens when you blame and shame yourself? How do you deal with it? How do you get out of it? How long does it take you to get out of it? And what is your motivation for doing it at all? What's so bad about you as a human? What's so bad that you've done all the things that humans do? What have you learned from that situation so you won't do that again? And why isn't all of that all right as a system, as a major thing? Pardon me. Oh, I hate that. Pardon me very much. I love pollen. Hang on. I went out this morning and took a nice big sniff of outside. I should have not done that right before a radio show anyway. All right. More questions. I think it's really important, and this is the last question I'm going to put on the table for you right now. I think it's really important for you to get comfortable with not being comfortable. what I mean by that is that there's a life pattern that I find in people called the seeker to feel good. The seeker to feel good is people that kind of run to situations that'll make them feel good, but only temporarily. Give them pleasure. Remember, there's a difference between pleasure and gratification. I can enjoy a beautiful sunset, and it's very pleasurable, but I'm not going to remember it tomorrow. And I'm not going to run ahead and try to find another sunset. It's just something wonderful to enjoy right then, and that's gone. But gratification is something that comes up from within you. It's part of your creative process. It's very satisfying. Even when you're suffering, it's satisfying. You know, I find myself when I'm writing or when I used to act, when I find, when I'm really doing something that's gratifying, you can realize that you really don't want to be anywhere else but doing that, even if the answers aren't coming. It's gratifying. I think that sometimes the seeker to feel good is running around for those little pleasurable moments instead of realizing that discomfort, pain, upset in some way is all part of the human condition. There's something to get out of it. This is not something to chronically stay in. This is an opportunity to know yourself better. The bottom line here is, if you don't know yourself better, we can talk about authenticity till the cows come home, and it's just going to be talk. Because the truth is, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to know ourselves. We have to put these things in place in a step-by-step manner. And then you have it. Now, getting to my next point, I found another article, 5 Ways to be Fully Authentic. This was Dr. Christine Carter. I thought she had some good points. I also thought there was something in here, as in a lot of articles. By the way, it's even in the one that I just told you about by Dr. Davis, and we will continue and go back to that in just a minute. I have a bugaboo here. You want to know what my bugaboo is? I've teased you all long enough. My bugaboo is when psychologists or anybody says, "You must speak your truth." I hate that expression. I'm going to tell you right now. If you are my client or you're coming to me, I'm going to say, don't you ever say that. There is nothing like that. Speaking your truth is an ego phrase. What they never tell you is there's a truth with a small t and there's a truth with a big T. And everybody that's got their fists in the air saying, I have to speak my truth, is coming from the ego jealous mind. Because when you're coming from your larger truth, that would never occur to you to say that. So, all of these articles that say, speak your truth, I say, really, they're not thinking deep enough. Now, I will say this to that end, and that there's a lot of people have never learned to speak up at all. And when you first start learning to speak up, you're speaking up in ego. It's never going to get you the results you want, but at least you're speaking up and saying something, right? And it is in the constant using of that voice, adding of the desire to know more about yourself and God and consciousness itself. That's what consciousness is, that you do cross into the realms of your excellence, which is called the highest self. So you have to start somewhere. get your fist down from the air and don't use that phrase, because we must acknowledge that truth is relative. By the way, I have one. Thank you for listening and liking this. But you have another. We may share a lot of points, we may not. But the fact is, we all have it. And my truth does not have to be yours. Yours have to be mine. We don't have the truth of our local politician. We don't. It's all right. Now, those of you that are on the consciousness journey, and certainly you wouldn't be listening to a show like this if you weren't, right? Are seeking the truth. I say that's great. That's just great. And the irony is that people that do cross over out of the ego child's mind and into these higher arenas of self usually see the same thing, that God is all there is, and much more. Infinite and ever expanding set of truths always in motion, right? And that we must go with. But beware of that phrase. When I see it, it's like, I'm going to automatically kind of take the rest of what somebody says with a bit of a grain of sand. Now, let's talk about lying, because I also have quite a different take on that. Lying to me, certainly pretending to be something you're not is lying. Absolutely. We've got to challenge lies like that have to do with us. But I do want to mention about lying to other people, because there is no black and white to any of this, okay? I think sometimes a lie is the kinder thing to do, really. Sometimes you can't get it. And I think of one particular instance where I had a client whose mother was absolutely haranguing her. They lived in different cities, and the mother called every single solitary day, several times a day, and the mother told her how to dress and what to do and how to have her marriage and what to eat and what not to eat and what piece of furniture to buy and what not to buy and what she looked good in clothes and what not. And she was beginning to come out of this and realize, wait a minute, and the mother had also trained her to be responsible for her happiness, that she, was her little slave. And she wanted to stop all these phone calls. Now, she did have a perfectly responsible job. So it was interesting, because I said, well, why don't you just share with your mother that your hours have changed a bit, or that you have a big project that's coming up, and that you can't do this, and that you will call her a couple of times a week when you have the time to do that. And when you feel like doing that, you make that, that promise. You can also not be on the phone for the 2 hours that she has always required with you. You can say, I've got to go. Well, she immediately panicked. And the panic came out as, I can't do that. That's lying. And I said, okay, well, I think it's just a great idea to tell the truth. So let's organize that. Mother, you're an asshole. You have brainwashed me my whole life. I'm coming out of that. You have been wrong. I am deeply angry with you. Quite frankly, right now, I don't know whether I'll ever forgive you. I think that you are selfish, bossy. You have never your whole life thought of anybody but you. I am not your slave. I'm not responsible for your happiness, and yet you've made, well, you all get the point. Okay. And I said, so which is more loving? And she said, the lie. And I said, yes, and here is the bottom line. The bottom line to whether you are saying a lie like that or the truth is this: what mind are you saying it from? Are you saying it from love and from someone trying to, and for the benefit of someone else and you, by the way? Or are you doing it out of the ego child's mind, out of fear, out of anger, out of rage, out of resentment? You see, if she kept on like this, she would resent it. She was already resenting it, right? So what's going to happen? She's going to get angrier and angrier, more and more and more resentful. You've got to stop what's making you resentful, ladies and gentlemen. You see? So everything is relative here, but the big news, the big thing about that story is what mind, knowing yourself very, very well, being completely honest, what mind are you saying anything from? The fear-based, angry, ego child's mind, self-indulgent and awful, or the we're all awful, by the way. That's not a judgment about us. It's just that kids, that's us. We're awful. We're all so wonderful. We're everything. Why? Isn't it all right? It is. It is all right. Or are you doing it out of the love mind? Now, she goes on to say that, and I think this is a very good point, that when we are full of pretense, let's go back to pretending for a moment. It is causes us a great deal of stress. Certainly, if you do it chronically, it causes a lot of stress. This is how lie detectors came into being, because they don't detect a lie, they detect the physiological stress that you're under. And sometimes I think that this is in the advanced areas, if you certainly in the, when I say advanced areas, in the higher mind, sometimes the most loving thing to do is to be quiet. Something lovely in this article, though, and I want to bring that up to you right now. It's something that Byron Katie said. I like Byron Katie a lot. She said that there are only 3 kinds of businesses. I love this. Mine, yours, and God's. And anything out of human control, she considers God's business. Now, I'd like to quote several of Byron Katie's quotes in this, because I think they're quite lovely. She says, much of our stress comes from mentally living out of our own business. I agree with that. I'm going to go on to say that if I judge you, I'm in your business. You understand that? If I judge you, I'm in your business. I'm not in my business. Byron Katie goes on to say, being mentally in your business keeps, in your business, being mentally in your business, as I said, if I judge you, okay, keeps me from being present in my own. To think that I know what's best for anyone else is to be out of my business. Even in the name of love, it is pure arrogance, and the result is tension, anxiety, and fear. And by the way, the tension, anxiety, and fear is in both of you. But it's particular because you have stepped over your own line. You're just supposed to stay in your business. Do I know what's right for me? That is your business. I was particularly, when I read that, I thought it was beautifully expressed. I was thinking about my journey with a good friend of mine. Many of you lived through that with me. My good friend was a precious, dear woman I know, who was very conscious and yet drank herself to death. My group that knew her quite well, and we all loved her. She loved us. Wish she hadn't done that. And we went through various stages of our love for her. First of all, when it came to consciousness for all of us of what she was doing, we wanted her to stop. We were very judgmental about this. We wanted our friend back the way we thought she ought to be back, right? But as time went on, we realized we had a choice. The choice was to judge her actions or to love her. I'm really proud of this group and me because we chose to love her. I had very frank talks with her. You know, I don't understand what you're doing, but you have the right to live and die the way you choose. She would hear me. We would talk about it. We talked about a lot of things. We laughed about a lot of things. It was wonderful. And we did lose her. There was something that she needed to learn in her path that she needed to learn. It was not my business to try to convince her otherwise. It was her business. And what we all ended up doing is respected her business, and she was doing what she needed to do, even though we didn't like losing her. That's our business to deal with that. You understand? I think this is such an important thing that we all must realize in our work with consciousness. What business do we have here? You know, if we have coronavirus out there, that's God's business. And how to protect ourselves is our business individually. But I think that that's a really important lesson for all of us, that we must indeed stick only with our business. You know, I go back to talking about the book that I wrote, The Life You Want. You can get it off Amazon or off our website, I think. Our website will take you right to it. It's called The Life You Want. And the first thing that I said, and this book is entirely, channeled, was this is the age of individual consciousness, and what you think, do, and say right now determines everything. It's really important to wake up right now. I wrote this book about, 10 years ago, and here we are in that energy. We've been in that energy, but now it's really here, and you're going to see it the rest of your life. So deal with your business. I think that's important. Another thing that she goes on to say, and I do agree with this, she said that accept the ugly bits of yourself, including difficult emotions. Being you is massively different, she goes on to say, from being perfect or being the best possible version of yourself. We're all human, and by definition, that means we're often messy, raw, and wrong. I love that messy, raw, and wrong. This Dr. Carter continues to say, when we love only the parts of ourselves we deem to be good or strong or smart, we reject the parts that make us real. Guys, being real is the most beautiful thing there is. Yeah. There's a lot of artificiality in the world. What we're waiting for is you. And you're not disguising you from anybody who's really looking. That's the irony, isn't it? You're only disguising that from yourself. She said all this sets us up for inauthenticity. Seeming perfectionism, and perfection is fake, and it is. You know, I've said that the only thing that's perfect is God. And the perfection lies in the imperfection of us. Because when we accept our imperfection, there's nothing to see but God underneath. That's consciousness. That's deepening consciousness, and in it, in it, in its advanced stage, enlightenment. I had a hard time saying that. Not enough tea, I guess. Certainly, we need to accept our flaws. That doesn't mean continue to live with them. The irony is when we acknowledge, when we accept these things, and we own them, and we assimilate them into us, a lot of energy comes back in the moment, and we find ourselves, because this is automatically released us in higher stages of consciousness, we find ourselves wanting to live differently, make different decisions. She puts in this article something that has always been one of my favorite songs. This is a song by Leonard Cohen called Anthem. You can look up the lyrics, but let me give you the refrain. The refrain, I think, is one of the most beautiful refrains of all times. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Isn't that wonderful? That's how the light gets in. Come on. Who's trying to be perfect here? And so many people say, I've given up perfection a long time ago, and they implode into something they're not either. Don't you understand? In the middle is you. There's nothing wrong with it. Never has been anything wrong with it. Never will be anything wrong with it. I'd like to stop right there with a thought, and that is, when we accept all parts of ourselves, and certainly accept these parts of ourselves that we think are flawed in some way, what lies on the other side of the wrong bits, as she calls it, is what you want. A deepening of who you are, the ability to create a life for yourself in a very conscious and deliberate way, a deeper capacity for loving, more creativity. The beneficence of God lies there, beyond what you are pushing away as so wrong. And I think that we've got to forgive now ourselves for being human, and not only forgive it, but embrace it, own it, and go on. We're going to continue our journey next week, okay? Let's do a prayer right now. And I'm just crazy about all of you, and I wish you good lives. So we're going to continue our journey through talking about these elements of authenticity next week. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, thank you so much as we open now to this lesson and to things that we are called to do in life, to the deepening of ourselves, to the truth-telling, to the honesty of our being, to the living our business and dealing with that, and allowing other people to do what they need to do in life, in this world. We ask for peace, dear God, a peace beyond all understanding. For we know in you and in this energy, all right. It continues to be all right, even though things change and shift. We are growing, and we are cooperating. And we give all thanks for this. Thank you, dear God, for all of this. And we say this prayer now in all gratitude, knowing that these things are true in our lives. We say this in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of all of our friends who are listening in today. Thank you. And so it is. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to thank you very, very, very much for getting the word around about these shows. You know, we're really trying to find the people that want this kind of work, and we don't know who they are without you. You all have networks of friends and friends beyond friends, and some friends you don't even know might feel this way. Oh, thank you, Kat. That's so sweet. Thank you. It means the world to me that you listen, and you're a dear friend of mine now. You really are. And all of you that listen, some of whom I know, and some of whom I do not know, but we're all in this in spirit, aren't we? Yeah, I feel like that. Sometimes I think the actual introduction is unnecessary when we recognize each other in spirit. Thank you. You guys, I want you to have a wonderful week. I want to thank you again for getting the word around, all the social media that you do for us, and sending the shows around. I think you can do that on Block Talk Radio, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I don't have that particular screen up, being the host, so it means the world. And our group continues to grow. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. So thank you very much, guys. You all have a great week. Be sure to know that God loves you through you. That's your business. Okay? So for heaven's sakes, be kind to yourself. Realize that. Allow God to be kind to you, through your behaviors and your thoughts and your feelings that are yours and yours alone. Your business. I love you. Have a wonderful week and stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.